public-private partnerships to power data-driven decision-making. And first, we're going to have Mark Baxendale, Director of Public-Private Partnerships at MasterCard Canada. Thanks, Mark.
And my sound is live. Great. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here with you today at the 5th Annual Data and Analytics for the Public Sector Conference. I want to thank the organizers for bringing us all together here today, and you can certainly feel a buzz in the room, which is either about the Jays' victory last night or a bunch of data-focused individuals getting together and talking about the different exciting things going on. Certainly a no better time, I think, from our perspective than now for the public sector to be having these conversations about leveraging analytics and innovating within the government context. So before I start my presentation, I want to just ask you guys a couple of questions. The first one is, by a show of hands, who wishes they had better access to real-world economic data to make more informed decisions in their role or with their departments? Okay, thank you. We got a couple of hands. You worried me for a second. Who would like this data that I just referenced, or any of their current data sources, in closer to real time to make these decisions more quickly? Show of hands again. Great. And finally, who would like, on top of the data they have access to today, tools that can help them determine the precise economic impact of either programs or decisions that their teams and governments are running? Great. So you might see what I'm doing here a little bit, but I think seeing some of the hands in the room today helps to validate a lot of conversations that we've been having with the public service across Canada. And it's that there's a real need for better access to reliable real-world data. People want access to this data faster. I mean, you think about what's gone on this year, the need to have access to data to make decisions more quickly or react has become that much more important. And there is interest in making our government more efficient and being able to drive these analytical answers more quickly and more accurately. So in my role as the lead of public-private partnerships here at MasterCard Canada, one of my main goals is to do these exact things, to help the public sector get in this rapidly changing environment, get access to the insights that they need to make the informed decisions and to back up the decisions they're making with the data that goes into it in the way that citizens are now demanding this of their governments. So I've already had a few people ask me, you might be surprised or wondering, what's MasterCard doing up on the stage talking to me about data and analytics at a conference like this? And so that's probably because you associate us with the piece of plastic in your wallet, maybe the virtual version that's now on your phone. And the first myth that I need to dispel is that MasterCard doesn't actually issue your credit card. We don't set your interest rate or your credit limit, so I can't help you there. That's actually done by financial institutions in Canada. Instead, we're the technology that helps power the digital economy in Canada. Every time a Canadian taps their digital or physical MasterCard to pay for their groceries, their child's birthday gift, their morning coffee, it sets off a set of secure and seamless interactions that allow these transactions and payments to go through in a blink of an eye. And so our global payment network is what actually connects all of these constituents, whether it's consumers, businesses, and financial institutions together to make these things possible. Now, in Canada, we actually have a very long and proud history of being a part of the Canadian economy. We've had an office and employees here for over 50 years. And in 2020, we opened our global cyber and intelligence center of excellence out in Vancouver. This is a data and technology hub that is focused on developing advancements in the cybersecurity field to help keep both the payments and the broader digital ecosystem safe. So I referenced analytics. Now I'm talking about cybersecurity. Everyone's waiting for me to connect this back to MasterCard. So MasterCard doesn't fashion ourselves to be a payments company, but rather a technology company. And as the payments ecosystem has evolved, so has our business. We have been, over a number of years, developing solutions that help various payment ecosystem constituents in all kinds of areas that are adjacent, but not directly inside of payments. That's things like data analytics, loyalty and personalization, fraud reduction, risk management, threat intelligence, a number of different cybersecurity practices. And our services have now become a substantial part of our business. It's not something that our consumers see every day when they use their card, but it's a massive part of the relationships that we now have in Canada and around the world. And when you bring together our services business and our payment solutions and capabilities, it means that we actually now serve and partner with all kinds of entities. It's not just banks, it's not just merchants, it's all kinds of entities, including governments. I'm a part of a global practice at MasterCard that is focused on partnering with governments around the world. Today, we work in about 135 countries, and we partner with over 300 public sector agencies. The focus of our work coalesces around four main pillars. The first is improving operational efficiencies across payments and services. This is the more obvious one. It's helping governments get paid more efficiently, whether that's paying their suppliers, receiving money from citizens, or dispersing it out for different programs. The second is modernizing public infrastructure through digital transformation and enhanced security. There's a lot of ways that the payments and financial ecosystem has become more digital for the past 20 years, and we're looking to bring those advancements to the types of digital interactions that citizens are now expecting to have with their governments for the next 20 years. The third is leveraging data and analytical tools to measure impact or improve decision making. We're going to come back to this one. It's kind of the main event. And the fourth is driving financial inclusion to ensure broader access to the financial ecosystem. So again, in no surprise, I want to take you guys through a couple examples around pillar number 3 today. And then I'm going to bring up my colleague, Nicholas Richard, and he's going to help us dive into a few of these as he leads a number of these projects. Before I do that, I want to just help bring this to life. I'm doing a lot of talking, but not just when we leverage our data, when we leverage all 4 of the pillars I just spoke about to really unlock the full power of MasterCard in a time of need or to solve an important problem. So I'm going to play a short video, and then we'll come back to talk about the Canadian examples.
The biggest migration crisis in Europe after the Second World War.
We have 300,000 coming to just one city, so of course it puts an enormous strain on the city services.
There are many possibilities in the smaller cities, more accommodation, more work possibilities.
Маєш і можеш зрозуміти, де ти можеш жити, скільки налогів.
Thank you, guys. We're extremely proud of an example like that, where we were able to use our data and technology for such an important cause at that time. So as we move into Canada, specifically this year, I don't think there's a word that many would debate me has been one of the most used words of the year, and that's tariffs. From grocery store shelves, procurement pipelines, dinner tables around the country, this has touched every corner of our economy. And governments and industry have been under pressure to respond to these threats and shocks with both agility and precision. And that's where MasterCard Spending Pulse and Tariff Tracker information come in. Spending Pulse is a macroeconomic data platform that tracks retail sales across all payment types, not just MasterCard, but everything including cash and checks. It's powered by our anonymized MasterCard transaction data, but it's enriched with multiple external data sources, from census information, weather data, treasury yields, exchange rates, the list goes on, and it's all refreshed in near real time. We have a number of clients that use tools like this to understand trends and inform their forecasts in key sectors or in even sub-geographies in Canada or other parts of the world. So when the world was scrambling to measure the impact of trade instability, we leveraged the power of this Spending Pulse data and the knowledge of our MasterCard Economics Institute team to create the Tariff Tracker. This was a weekly report designed to provide the latest data and thought leadership on some of the impacts that we were seeing. These tools are an example of the power of near real-time data. This empowered leaders to make decisions or statements based on actual changing trends as opposed to amalgamating anecdotal data points. We were able to see things with very little lag, like the shift of consumer spending patterns to more domestic spending in Canada, as well as the things like the changing tourism patterns in terms of even between the cross-border between Canada and the US. We were able to see those things so early that in Q2 of this year, we were already seeing a 4.5% lift in total retail sales in Canada, which was driven by the Buy Canadian movement, and it was the largest gain in retail sales we had seen since 2022. And that was further evidenced by a 13% growth within the apparel segment, specifically on domestic in-store apparel spending, something we often see citizens travel and spend for abroad. Domestic tourism also showed some of these early signs in the spring in Q2, with a 5% lift in lodging spend within Canada by domestic cards. And it also showed a large jump in spend in Alberta, which we know to be a large tourist destination for Canadians when you consider the Rockies. So as I previously mentioned, measuring the impact of external events is really quite challenging. Do I have any Swifties in the audience at an analytics public sector conference? Okay, I'm seeing some hands come up. So less than a year ago, Taylor Swift's Eras Tour lit up the world. It lit up Toronto and Vancouver. And the economic impact was believed and talked about to be as big as and impressive as the performances themselves. But at MasterCard, when we measure economic impact, we don't just report an overall volume on a particular weekend or a particular day. We leverage our MasterCard Economics Institute and our proprietary analytical methods to determine what was the lift driven by this event against a baseline had the event not taken place at the same time. Really trying to get to that better answer of incrementality for our partners and for our own analysis. And so what we saw against these baselines was in Toronto, during the Eras Tour visits, spending on hotels raised over 45% from the expected benchmark, and spending on restaurants in the surrounding area of the stadium and the arena raised by over 31% during that time. In Vancouver, the lift was even bigger, with hotels surging to 109%, and restaurant spending in the vicinity of the arena growing by over 41% during the benchmark. The great thing about MasterCard data is it's also global. And so we can look at what are some of the trends when it comes to internationally issued card spending within Canada. And we saw that the tourism flows related to Taylor Swift had even greater impacts. A 64% lift in their expected spending at hotel during the same time, and a 90% lift in that restaurant spending around the arena. And in Vancouver, the largest lifts were seen with 130% in hotel spending and 127% growth in restaurant spending around the arena. Of course, this is where the tour culminated, and you can sort of appreciate the greater impact it had. This can all be further broken down to pinpoint precise geographies or even look at other visitor sources and slices that drove the biggest lifts for the economy. Now, to us, these aren't just numbers. They're proof that these major cultural moments can drive real economic impact. I think something that we're hearing a lot about is the summer of soccer that is coming up across Canada, the US, and Mexico, and communities grappling with what is this going to mean, what are the impacts going to be, and we think now is the time to start this dialogue about how we can capture this economic impact in an intentional and coordinated way, just like we did with Taylor Swift. Final example for you before I bring up Nicholas. How often do you guys read a headline and wonder if the problem at hand or the debate that's going on could be backed or answered better by data? Things like closing streets for festivals, changing parking hours, construction that's happening. This is something that we hear quite a bit about. And so while this may not have been in our local headlines, I want to take you to the London, UK, to the Lower Marsh Market in the London Waterloo district. Once a bustling Sunday market in the 1800s, it's now become a Monday to Friday staple in modern times. But the market was faced with a new decision. Do we open on Saturdays? Do we open for special event requests that we're getting? And how do we make this decision based on data as opposed to how it was done in the Victorian era with anecdotes and opinions being shared? And so thanks to a partnership between local organizations, We Are Waterloo, the Greater London Authority, and MasterCard, the local leaders in this case had access to the London High Streets data service. This was a platform that we had created in partnership with them that aggregated anonymized spending data, footfall patterns, vacancy rates, and even intraday consumption changes down to very specific 3-hour chunks. And the impact in this case was tangible. The market organizers finally had an answer to the age-old question from city council and local businesses, which was, what is the value of going to all this trouble? What will it be worth to us? What they saw was when they tested an event, they saw market spending in the Lower Marsh area surge by 25 to 80%, depending on the event type, relative to the regular traffic during the week. And they saw that in the surrounding area, the spend lifted again by anywhere from 13 to 29%, depending on the area, the event itself. And so these insights justified things as they continued, such as more street lighting, outdoor power points, investing in other cultural programming tied to some of the most successful events. And we think it's just another example on a smaller scale than Taylor Swift about in these instances where it's not just about the numbers, it's about the dialogue and the partnership that's created to harmonize the data and the community requirements to really drive towards economic vitality for that community. So with that, I'd like to invite Nicholas up to join me, and we'll just engage in a brief conversation about these examples.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
Thank you for joining.
Apologies to everyone. My voice is a little raspy. I was lucky enough to attend the game last night. I was very worried that I was going to lose my voice, but we're here.
I was worried too. All right, thanks for being here. I went a little long, so we'll dive right in. What to you is the most interesting thing about these case studies and some of the other work that you've done with government so far?
Yeah, I actually started my career as a teacher and worked in the public sector. And so I know the challenges of working in the public sector. It is sometimes you're working with many different stakeholders. You're also working with elected officials. And often you're lacking the data to be able to make decisions and understand what's going on. Survey data, for example, has its time and place. We at MasterCard have a research center as well. That said, with survey data, typically the data is very expensive to acquire. It often is fairly delayed, and you often only get the most engaged consumers to be able to talk to that. With that, real data allows you to be able to take a look at what's happening. It allows you to get granular in the area of what's happening, and really it allows you to tease out the most important information for your stakeholders, both within your organization and your partners across different organizations.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. So we're talking a lot about our data at MasterCard, the Spending Pulse being sort of our real nucleus product. How could you see this help governments or other organizations respond to different changes in more real time?
Yeah, absolutely. Just as a reminder, Spending Pulse is a platform with access to data across all payment types, leveraging our anonymized MasterCard data. What is really unique about the tool is it looks at the total sales in different geographic regions across the board and is updated on a real-time basis. So we update the data 7 days after the later, so the next week you have access to be able to see what's going on. That's fairly unique, not just in public and private sectors. We have clients using this data to make real decisions. So whether you're a big retailer understanding what happened last week, or you're a government organization trying to understand the long-term trends of a decision that's being made, and you want to compare the performance of your local area to another area and the decisions that you've made, that is one of the areas that you're digging into. We actually, I work with a chief economist of a US state, and he ends up logging into the platform every Friday when we update the data and is checking the data because he's informing his stakeholders and updating his forecasting models on a weekly basis because he can say, this county is performing better than this other county. Or he's actually very concerned about Canadian tourism, and he sees it in real time within the platform and the lack of spending in some of those categories.
Yeah, which is fantastic. I think you wanted to share with the audience another example of that we recently published about the use of our Spending Pulse data to help governments and other agencies understand different trending from real-world events.
Yeah, absolutely. What we're going to look at here is a example of what we published recently on hurricanes. Now, We don't want hurricanes to hit, but unfortunately, we see that across the board. We see it a lot in the U.S., and I don't know if we have anyone from PEI in the audience, but I spent a lot of time out east. We do see a lot of hurricanes come in the East Coast as well. What this is a graph on how spend changes over time pre and post the event. So in this case, we do see the spend pick up a little bit pre the event, which is the hurricane, but we see a precipitous drop off of spend during the event and right after. And as you notice, we never recover that spend. So that's the kind of information that is used by organizations to plan when these big major events happen, right? And so we're able to see that, I think, on the next slide. So in terms of spend as you can imagine, people are trying to leave. So some businesses do end up picking up more spend, if you think about it. Gas stations, of course, as people try to leave, and groceries. But while restaurants, people are too busy to be going to restaurants at that time. That said, after the case, most categories of spend continue in the days after a big event like a hurricane, continue to see a drop in spend and a drop in economic effect. We've seen this in different regions, and this amounts to hundreds of millions of dollars in different regions that aren't spent because of what's happening with the hurricane. Now, I'm sure many of you here have probably had a few winter storms wherever you live. We also see a similar effect with winter storms. It's not as large, but what we do see with winter storms is we see a little bit more of a bump back in the next day, so there's less of an overall decline.
Awesome. I think those are two, we've done a number of examples now about the use of our data to help, maybe bridge a gap or measure something that's not easily tracked for a lot of the audience here. But what about some of the decisions the government might make where it's their decision? So it's not Taylor Swift coming, it's not a storm hitting, but it's a new program, it's a change in operations. How could they benefit from public-private partnerships and analyzing some of those opportunities?
Great question. One of the tools that we have at MasterCard is called Test and Learn, and it measures incrementality. That is, compared to the similar sample, what is the lift in that decision, and focuses on isolating that lift. It's been around for about 20 years and is on the leading edge of analytics. In terms of how we've helped the public sector, we worked with a police service in the US, and what we did is we were focused on community engagement. The local police team spent more resources in a specific area on community engagement, and we measured the effect on several crime indicators over time, and we were actually able to see a sustained drop in the key KPIs that they're measuring, including violent crime, based on this community engagement effort. Not only did we see that effect during the community engagement, but it was actually a long-term sustained effort. Now, a lot of these public efforts take a lot of effort, right? But at the same time, they're not always easy to measure. So we were able to isolate that and provide really good data around that, and that was leveraging some of the public data. Another example is with a organization in St. Louis, and what we were able to do is we were able to measure on measuring the 911 diversions. So from that perspective, there were many 911 calls in this area that we were helping them with. And what they did is, instead of sending in emergency services, they were offering alternative services to support, especially in cases where there's alternative available. And what they saw is that they were able to reduce the police calls and reduced crime in the area as well. And they were able to measure that over time.
No, it's great. And I mean, I think the point being these things are, back to even the London example, you know, they can be debated about should we put more money here, should we not, and there's differing opinions. So I think helping to get to the measurement of those things, right, is what we want to try to help with. Finally, I know we've got a lot of healthcare folks in the audience here. Do we have any examples of supporting an industry like that?
Yeah. Probably not the first thing, like you said, when you think of MasterCard as supporting healthcare. We do work with healthcare organizations globally, and being able to measure both patient outcomes as well as internal outcomes, including staffing. One of the ways that we've helped an organization was looking at throughput of hospitals. One of the key in the public sector hospitals is how do you measure that, and how do you compare when there's so many different things about the patient lifespan, so many different confounding variables. And so we help isolate those variables to help organizations make better decisions in healthcare.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that.
I have one question for you, Mark.
Okay.
So what do you think is really driving a great public-private partnership?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was shared even in the earlier session, right? I mean, when you go from working with the private sector to the public sector, there's a lot of things to learn. And I think something that I've really appreciated is there's a lot more process that needs to be followed. There's a lot more rigor that needs to go into backing up analytical decisions. And I think where we can invest the time in truly understanding those needs, working on the due diligence and collaborating on the process that they have to follow is where we see a lot of great success. And I think that's where you can see some of the responsible innovation in the public-private partnerships, and where we're certainly looking forward to doing more of this work. Cool. Happy to stop there with a couple minutes left and take any audience questions if there are any.
Right here.
Sure.
Just wait for a mic. Oh, no, you go first. Go ahead. Well, I could go after. He's a colleague, so he'll go second.
Nasaran Adeli. I'm from the University of Toronto Data Science Institute. You mentioned about supporting the industries, supporting, lots of examples of the local governments. Do you have any partnerships where any of the universities who are doing the research on, let's say, macroeconomic impacts? So either by providing them access to your data platforms or funding their research.
And that was for post-secondary, you said, or for
Yes.
educational institutions?
Yes.
Yeah, so we would have a couple of different ways for something like that to come to life. I mean, some of these are sort of true business partnership opportunities where we do support, public education entities that are looking to understand these macroeconomic trends. We do also in Canada have a number of sort of research-based partnerships that we've invested in across universities in both the West and East Coast. And it comes off of some of the work of our cybersecurity data center. So certainly lots of higher education and post-secondary examples that we could speak more to. And Troy, you were here.
Hi, hopefully this is working. So I noticed that a lot of your examples are very single event or single decision based, that, there was this event like a concert or this decision taken, and we're basically trying to understand the impact of that by measuring lift, whether it's increase or decrease. And I'm curious if in your work you've tried to tackle examples that are over a longer period of time and with multiple factors at play. So let's say we're trying to understand what is the leading cause on a macroeconomic level for decreases in MasterCard spending or changes to the basket of goods. For example, during a bad economic climate, most people will put more of their groceries on MasterCard, for example. And if you're able to do something which is looking at past 2 years of data and being able to tell that, okay, most of the decrease in spending are attributable to, let's say, the trade war rather than anything internal economic policy in Canada, for example,
right.
or vice versa, that the trade war is actually like just 20% responsible for the decrease in spending. Mostly it's because of other economic factors. So I'm just curious whether you're able to, using your insights, look at more longer-term multi events and multi-decision sort of like environments and be able to come to conclusions like that.
Yeah, I'm happy to start, Nick. If you, I know you,
Yeah.
I can hear you got some thoughts. So the great thing about the test and learn tool that we spoke about here, it's great at isolating impact so that we're not getting a noisy outcome as to what's driving X or Y. And so we can use that tool and feed it with as much historical data as we needed. So tracking an event over time, or two sort of parallel paths from a control and a group that's had a differential treatment or experience, can be done in a single isolated event or on a much longer spectrum, with the goal of exactly isolating those factors. So definitely we've got lots of history, lots of data, and that's what Nick gets to do every day.
I'm actually working on a specific example that's relevant. It is with the private sector, but it is in Las Vegas. Las Vegas has a lot going on all the time. I'm sure you know that. One thing we do see, though, is Canadians are not going there right now. But what we do see in Las Vegas is there's so many different openings. We've had the Sphere open, we've had multiple casinos close, we've had different events come through, F1, Taylor Swift. What they asked us to do is isolate the effects to understand what is happening, what are positive effects of their business and what are negative effects of their business. And so we're creating synthetic controls with our data to be able to do that for them, to tell them how different events are helping their business and how different events are not helping their business.
Awesome.
Great.
Thanks,
I know
guys.
we're out of time.
Yeah,
Thank you guys so
we
much.
are out of time, but it was great. Thanks for it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so we have break now, which is in the room next door. So just a reminder, if you visit the exhibitors and they scan your card, you get entered into the contest. You're gonna come back here for 11:30. We have 2 more sessions, and then lunch is at 12:30. Right, so half an hour, and then come back here.
Oh, thank you.